Welcome to Audio Movie Recap. Today we are taking flight on an emotional journey fueled by thousands of brightly colored balloons and a promise made a lifetime ago. This is the complete, deeply moving story of the 2009 Pixar masterpiece, Up. Disclaimer. This video is an independent fan-made audio recap created for educational and entertainment purposes. UP and all its associated characters, plot points, and assets are the intellectual property of Pixar Animation Studios and Walt Disney Studios. This channel does not claim ownership over the source material and encourages everyone to watch the original film. The story begins in a black and white movie theater during the 1930s. A young, quiet boy named Carl Fredricksen sits mesmerized by a newsreel showcasing his hero, the famous dashing explorer Charles Muntz. Muntz travels the world in his massive airship, the Spirit of Adventure, discovering exotic things. His greatest find is the skeleton of a giant 13-foot-tall bird from a remote mythical South American location called Paradise Falls, a land time forgot. However, when scientists claim the skeleton is a fabrication, a disgraced Muntz vows to return to Paradise Falls and capture the bird alive to clear his name. Walking home wearing aviator goggles and holding a blue balloon, Carl hears a voice from an abandoned, dilapidated house. He steps inside to find a spunky, energetic, messy-haired girl named Ellie. She is a fellow Muntz fanatic pretending the house is her cockpit. Ellie instantly takes a liking to the quiet Carl, pinning a grape soda bottle cap to his shirt and declaring him a member of her adventure club. Later that night, Ellie sneaks into Carl's bedroom and shares her ultimate secret, her adventure book. Most of the pages are blank, but she reveals her dream to one day move her clubhouse to the top of Paradise Falls. Carl promises to take her there. What follows is a sweeping, silent montage of their life together. Carl and Ellie grow up, marry, and buy that very same abandoned house, restoring it into a cozy, colorful home. Carl sells balloons at the local zoo while Ellie works as a zookeeper. They spend their days picnicking on a grassy hill, cloud-watching and painting their mailbox. They dream of having children, but a heartbreaking visit to a doctor reveals they cannot. Pivoting, they refocus on their childhood dreams, saving up for a trip to Paradise Falls. Every time they fill their coin jar, however, life gets in the way. A blown tire, a broken leg, a tree falling through their roof. The jar is repeatedly smashed to pay for emergencies. Decades roll by in a flash. Their hair turns gray, their steps grow slower. Now an elderly man, Carl decides to surprise his sweet wife. He buys the airline tickets to South America, but before he can give them to her during their usual picnic, Ellie collapses. In a quiet hospital room, a frail Ellie hands Carl her old adventure book before passing away, leaving Carl completely alone in their quiet, empty house. The flying house years later. The world has changed around Carl. The neighborhood is consumed by towering skyscrapers, and his colorful home is the lone holdout in a massive, noisy construction site. Carl has become an embittered, lonely hermit, leaning heavily on his tennis ball-tipped cane and fiercely protecting everything Ellie touched. After a construction vehicle accidentally cracks his hand-painted mailbox, a panicked Carl strikes a worker with his cane. The court deems him a public menace and orders him to move into the Shady Oaks retirement home. The next morning, 2 retirement home attendants arrive to pick Carl up. But Carl has a plan of his own. Overnight, he used his old zoo equipment to tie thousands of helium-filled, multicolored balloons to the framework of his house. With a massive roar and the snapping of wood from the foundation, the house lifts into the air. It breaks free from the concrete jungle, soaring high above the city streets, casting a massive shadow over the skyscrapers as Carl chuckles in triumph. He is finally going to Paradise Falls. Carl settles into his favorite armchair, enjoying the peaceful quiet above the clouds. Suddenly, there is a loud, persistent knocking at his front door. Carl opens it in disbelief to find Russell, an 8-year-old, overly enthusiastic wilderness explorer. Russell had been visiting Carl the day before, trying to earn his final merit badge, the Assisting the Elderly badge, by hunting for a fictional creature called a snipe. Russell was trapped on the porch when the house took off. Before Carl can figure out how to get the boy home, the flying house encounters a ferocious thunderstorm. Cumulonimbus clouds surround them, lightning flashes violently, and the house spins out of control. Carl and Russell are thrown around the living room, window panes shatter, and objects crash to the floor as the storm violently pulls them south. Lost in the land time forgot, when the chaos subsides, the house drifts out of a thick blanket of fog. Carl looks out the window and gasps. Right in front of them, looming over a sheer drop of thousands of feet, is a massive, flat-topped mountain plateau. Across the deep rocky gorge sits Paradise Falls, and its massive plume of white water cascading down a sheer cliff into the jungle below. The storm carried them exactly where Ellie wanted to go. The house floats down onto the rocky terrain, but because many balloons pop during the storm, it doesn't have enough lift to fly high again. It hovers just a few feet off the ground. Carl and Russell harness themselves to the garden hose, physically pulling the floating house behind them like a giant parade balloon. Carl calculates that if they walk along the rim of the gorge, they can reach the falls before the helium completely deflates. As they trek through the dense, rocky jungle, Russell wanders off and discovers a towering 13-foot-tall bird. It has iridescent blue and purple feathers, a long neck, and a voracious appetite for Russell's chocolate bars. Russell immediately adopts the bird, naming her Kevin, unaware that this is the exact species Charles Muntz has been hunting for decades. Shortly after, they encounter a chubby golden retriever wearing a high-tech collar. The collar translates the dog's thoughts into a mechanical human voice. The dog introduces himself. "My name is Doug. I have just met you, and I love you." Doug explains he is on a mission for his pack to find the giant bird. Suddenly, a pack of fierce, aggressive hunting dogs, a Doberman named Alpha, a Rottweiler named Beta, and a Bulldog named Gamma surround them. Their collars also have voice boxes, though Alpha's is broken, giving him a hilarious, high-pitched squeak. The pack forces Carl, Russell, Kevin, and Doug to follow them deep into a dark cavern. Inside the cave, Carl is shocked to find a massive hidden hangar containing the Spirit of Adventure airship. Out from the shadows steps its commander, Charles Muntz, now an eccentric old man, but still sprightly and dangerous. Carl is ecstatic to meet his childhood idol, and Muntz invites the travelers inside for dinner. The airship is luxurious, filled with invaluable artifacts and served by dozens of dogs wearing translation collars. However, the mood shifts drastically during dinner. Muntz reveals a deep, consuming paranoia. He shows Carl the skeletons of other explorers who tried to take credit for his work, implying he eliminated them. When Russell loudly mentions that they found a bird just like the one Muntz is hunting, Muntz's eyes turn cold and predatory. He realizes the bird is right outside on top of Carl's house. Terrified for Russell's safety, Carl orchestrates a frantic escape. They sprint out of the airship and through the rocky labyrinth, pulling the house behind them. Kevin is injured by a dog trap during the chase, but they manage to lose the pack with Doug's help. Safe for a moment, Russell begs Carl to help take the injured Kevin back to her babies in the jungle. Carl, looking at his deflating balloons, refuses. He screams that he only cares about getting Ellie's house to the falls. Before they can move, Muntz arrives in his airship. He sets fire to the bottom of Carl's house. Faced with a choice between saving his home or saving the bird, a desperate Carl chooses his house, using the garden hose to put out the flames. Muntz captures Kevin and flies away. Carl finally achieves his goal. He pulls the house to the very edge of the cliff overlooking Paradise Falls. He places his and Ellie's armchairs exactly where they had planned decades ago. But the victory feels entirely hollow. Russell is furious and heartbroken, tossing his Wilderness Explorer sash at Carl's feet before using some leftover balloons to fly off on a solo mission to rescue Kevin. Carl walks into his quiet living room and sits in his armchair. He opens Ellie's adventure book. He flips past the childhood pictures, expecting sadness. But as he reaches the section titled Stuff I'm Going to Do, he finds it is no longer blank. Ellie filled the pages with photos of their marriage, their picnics, their quiet moments, and their life together. On the very last page, underneath a photo of them sitting together in their old age, Ellie wrote a final note. "Thanks for the adventure. Now go have a new one. Love, Ellie." Tears filling his eyes, Carl realizes that loving Ellie was the greatest adventure of all. He runs outside. To give the house enough lift to fly one last time, he begins tossing everything out. He throws away his tables, his lamps, his old trunks, and finally his own heavy armchair. The house lifts into the sky. Carl flies the house to Muntz's airship, catching up just as Russell is captured by the dogs. Carl storms the airship, using his cane to fight off the canine guards. He manages to free Russell, Doug, and Kevin, leading them into the airship's kitchen. Muntz, armed with a rifle, corners them. A fierce battle breaks out on the top of the airship. Muntz shoots wildly, popping the remaining balloons, keeping Carl's house aloft. The house begins to tilt and slide off the airship's framework. Carl tricks Muntz by throwing a chocolate bar into the tilting house. When Muntz lunges in to grab Kevin, he trips on the balloon strings. The remaining strings snap, and Muntz plunges through the clouds, falling to the earth below. Carl, Russell, Doug, and Kevin pull themselves onto the airship's deck just in time. They watch silently as Carl's house, empty of its furniture but safe, drifts slowly down through the thick fog, disappearing into the clouds over Paradise Falls. Carl smiles, whispering a final goodbye to Ellie. The group uses the Spirit of Adventure airship to fly back to the city. Kevin is safely returned to her chicks, and Doug is officially adopted by Carl as his loyal companion. At the Wilderness Explorer graduation ceremony, Russell stands alone on stage waiting for a parent to pin his final badge. Suddenly, Carl walks onto the stage in a suit wearing his old aviator goggles. He steps up to Russell and pins the most valuable medal he owns onto the boy's sash, the Ellie badge, the very same grape soda bottle cap Ellie gave him when they were children. The story ends with Carl and Russell sitting on the curb outside an ice cream parlor, counting red and blue cars just like Russell used to do with his father, with the airship parked safely above them. And far away through the mist of South America, Carl's house rests perfectly at the very top of Paradise Falls, exactly where he promised Ellie it would be.